Welcome to Conversations. I'm Andy Millard. Jim Jackson. It's a simple sounding name, but it carries tremendous meaning for the residents of Tryon, North Carolina. Jim Jackson radiates the qualities so many of us strive to attain: decency, humility, trust, gentleness, forgiveness. They show up in every smile, every gesture, even in the twinkle of his eyes. This is the first in a series of conversations with Jim because, frankly, I couldn't find anything to cut. We'll start with his youth and adulthood. Jim's 89 now. His life has taken him to a lot of places and put him in contact with some famous people. Yet the lessons he's learned are pretty simple. And one of those lessons started with a simple question: why aren't I sitting with my friend?
I'm Jim Jackson. I was born on July the 20th, 1924. I had the good fortune of being born in Tryon, North Carolina, 1 mile from where we're speaking right now. And we're speaking from the depot in Tryon. I grew up in this town. It's a marvelous town. Just loved it.
Tell me about growing up in Tryon.
Okay. I remember this was a day when everybody had servants, and the black servants. We had a cook, we had a yard man, and so forth. And I remember that occasionally the cook would bring her grandchildren over who were about my age. Now I'm talking about when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And I loved playing with them, and I looked forward to these days when they would come. And then I went to school at Tryon Elementary School, and I wondered where these grandchildren were. And they told me that they had their own school, and I could only assume that their school was as good as ours. I would learn something different later. I really was not aware of this was the segregated life. Really was not aware of what this was until I was about 15 years old. And my family hired a young man about 20 years old. His name was Roy Berry. And Roy and I worked all summer in renovating the lower part of our house. We had a wonderful time together. We liked the same music. We were both big baseball fans. He was for the New York Yankees. I was for the Detroit Tigers. He was for Lou Gehrig. I was for Hank Greenberg. And if one of ours hit a home run and the other one didn't, we would lord it over the other. One night, Roy and I decided we'd go to the movies, which are right downtown Tryon. Us going to the movies consisted of Roy walking about a mile from his house, me walking about a mile from my house. We met outside of the movies, and Roy bought his ticket, and I bought my ticket. He went upstairs to the segregated part. I went down to the main part downstairs. All seemed very normal. This is the way things work. I don't know what happened, but sometime in the middle of the movie, it hit me like a thunderbolt. Why am I not sitting with my friend? I think I should be sitting with my friend. But that's not the way life was. And so I began to notice some other things. I noticed a difference in the housing in the black area than what it was in the white area. I noticed that in front of Ballinger's store down here, there were two water fountains, one for the white and one for the colored. And here at the depot, there were two waiting rooms, one for the white and one for the colored. Now on restrooms, the restrooms were not segregated. They just didn't have any for the blacks at all. So the black families, when they brought their children downtown, had to be sure they went to the bathroom real good before they came downtown. Well, this was my beginning of moving toward the civil rights, and I began to have very strong feelings about that.
And now let me ask you, that's interesting because not many people, not many white Southern people had the same kind of epiphany that you had and had the same kind of strong feelings. What do you think it is that made you different from others?
Well, this is true. This is true. After all, as white people, we were not being discriminated against.
Right.
And so we didn't see any reason, we didn't see anything wrong at all. We were not being discriminated against. And whatever the feelings were for the blacks, I don't know, but they were the ones that discriminated against.
So why you though? Why did you get bothered by it?
I think I give big thank you from my parents, particularly my dad. I think my dad, by exposing us, he was a Southern man, Southern traditional. He wasn't going to do anything about segregation. This is the way it was, and but I think he was instilling in me certain ideas and so forth that when I got to it, it seemed like something was wrong. Something was really wrong. My dad was in the cotton fabric business, and he started a business right here in Tryon in 1913.
Wow.
He and his dad my grandfather started the business together, and they had an office right here on Main Street in Tryon, and they rented it, 7 big rooms, for $25 a month. Now this was 1913, so that might have been a fairly healthy price, I'm not sure, in 1913. When they finally left the office in 1960, the rent was still $25 a month. Back to my dad, most remarkable man. He read in the newspaper in 1933, in the middle of the Depression, that nothing should touch the baby except cotton. No other kind of fabric, it's only cotton. And we had only cotton. He says, family, we're in the right business. Get in the car. We're going to California. We'll be selling cloth the whole way. And so this was our first trip of my memory. I was 8 years old, and so off we go. Well, the trip itself, they had to sort things out a little bit there. My brother was sitting in the middle. He was 12. My sister sitting on one side. She was 14, and I was sitting on the other side. I was 8. Now this is a hard trip. I mean, it's long distances without getting out or anything like that. Pretty boring for an 8-year-old. And he has to do something to stir up a little excitement. So I pinched my brother and I guess a natural reaction, he slugged me. And my mother wheeled around and said, "What did you do to my baby?" I was definitely her baby. Dad would call on the customer, and he would take with him my brother and me, not my sister who would be better than either one of us, or my mother. It was a man's world, business world, man's world. And my dad would be talking to a customer, and at some time, my dad would ask for a particular sample of cloth. Now, I had about 30 samples in my bag. My brother had about 30 in his bag. And he had asked one of us for such and such a sample. It was our business to get our hands on the right sample and give it to my dad. He would show it to the customer. At some point, the customer would ask, "Well, what is the price of this cloth?" My dad would act like he had forgotten. And so he would turn to my brother or me and say, "Son, what is the price of this cloth?" Now, there were no prices written anywhere, but we knew the prices of the cloth, and the prices for these 30 samples were something like 27 3/4 cents a yard, or 34 1/8 cents a yard, and we would call out the price of the yard, very proudly.
Yes.
I think, in retrospect, this probably had a rather good effect on the customer, because it was a time when you'd have one price for a good customer and another price for a poor customer, and we had only one price, and I think that sunk in. Anyway, it was a marvelous trip. We did fun things on the way. Went to places like Yosemite and Yellowstone and whatever. Got up to Seattle, Washington, and my dad said, "This has been such a successful trip. We're going to take a week off," and we took the inland waterway of Alaska.
Wow.
It's a trip that stands in my mind. I was just 8 years old. It stands in my mind right now, every bit of it. I became one of the salesmen for this. I had the Midwest territory. My territory started in Cincinnati, Ohio. I had all of the states from Ohio out to Minnesota. It would have been starting in 1949, and I worked in this business until 1957. I had customers that say to me, "How can you sell this cloth so much cheaper, this beautiful cloth, so much cheaper than your competitors who are in New York?" And I would say, "Well, you've got to come visit us. You'll see that you're not putting any overhead in this cloth, while our competition has spending thousands of dollars for where they have their offices in New York."
They're not spending $25 a month.
They're spending a little bit more than $25 a month. My winter trip, I'd go by train and bus, and if connections were not immediate, and I was antsy to get to the next place, I'd just get out on my thumb. And that's been a rather substantial part of my life.
Yes, it has.
That's another story.